Sarah Bernard, and we're back with the founder of Bonsai, Loriana Tisher. Loriana, thanks so much for joining us. And we've been talking about middle managers in the workforce today. And I'm curious, if you were to give middle management one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think one of the things that I've seen middle managers really struggle with is how do you engage people and empower them, but at the same time make sure you're keeping them in the right direction. And that has to do with setting boundaries. There seems to be a reluctance to let people know the sandbox within which they're supposed to play. And I have an example of a story that I think has really helped some managers hit home in terms of things that they've struggled with or with their employees. And it's if you let a horse out on the range and he's running around and enjoying it, and he doesn't see any fences, and he feels he can kind of roam anywhere. And one day he goes out a little too farther than he realized, and he gets a jolt with electricity. And it's like, probably shouldn't go that far. And so he goes in another direction, a few more miles out, and then another jolt. And he goes, over time he learns there actually is a fence. It's underground, it's electric. So he plays within that fence. But then a month later, he's out on the range, and he goes up towards that fence line, but before he gets there, he gets another jolt. And he realized the fence shifted. And so over time, what happens is he's noticing the fences are shifting, and he's not quite sure what to think about it. And it becomes discouraging and frustrating, and he's a little cautious in what he's doing because he doesn't know what's a safe area to play in and what's not. And if you can imagine, eventually over several months, he just stops moving. And that's in some cases what we've done with our employees and even the managers, where we've chartered them to do something, but we didn't give them any boundaries, and we just kind of yanked them back in. And when we do that, that's very disempowering to them. And so what it's important to do is to really identify when you send a person or a team out for a project or even a work group to accomplish a task. You empower them, you tell them where to go, but you also say, this is what I expect, here are the success criterion, here are the boundaries within which you have to work. And that way you're not adjusting midstream. Everybody knows the rules by which to play. And when I've shared that story, I've had so many people, their eyes just lit up, and they say, wow, that's me, I'm that horse. And so what I've done is I'll bring them, for example, a business owner and a leader into a meeting, and we'll say, let's bring those boundaries or the fence lines above the ground so everybody sees them. And when you do that, there's so much relief, and what also happens is then the managers can work on the strategic, the upper level managers, they work on the strategic activities, and they're able to empower and give the operational work down below. And so everybody's working on their highest level, and the organization is able to drive performance even higher. Right. But everybody's got to know what they're supposed to do.
So when a company calls you for help, typically what is your situation? Who's calling you? Is it the head of the company, or is it the middle management that's calling you in? And how do you address their needs?
Typically, it's the owner or executive level. Sometimes it can be a mid-level manager. It can be anywhere from a consulting project where they'll say, we need help with this. It could be a dysfunctional team, help us work better there. Sometimes I will go in and coach a leader or executive and help them improve their leadership skills with a number of tools, and having somebody to go back and talk to and say, I'm struggling with this, what do you suggest I do about it, is really critical. This is especially true with small and medium-sized companies. They can't afford to hire somebody with my background or expertise full-time, but they could bring me in on retainer, and they have somebody that they can text, call, email, or I can visit with them and say, hey, we've got this problem, help us work through it. And so I have some partnership relationships as well. So I'm kind of on staff, just like you'd have an accountant or a lawyer, you have somebody who's a leadership expert working with you.
Yeah. So we have to take a break again in a minute, but before we do, you work with a lot of students. And what advice do you give students who are nearing the end of their college careers as they're thinking about entering the workforce? What are your tips for success for them?
My tip for one of my biggest tips is it's not about you, it's about the company. And you need to think about how can you add value to the organization. And also think about yourself, just like an organization, how are you going to differentiate yourself from the other students? Soft skills are absolutely critical. We can teach you technical skills, but companies don't want to spend more time and money training you on communication, emotional intelligence, teamwork, collaborative skills. That's expected. And so if you can demonstrate those, all the better. And so to really think about what are you going to do to improve the organization, how can you add value, And networking is also incredibly critical, which we all talk about these days. But when you're networking, you're talking about driving performance for the business.
Right, right. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Loriana.
Thank you for having me.
Great tips and advice for people who are in middle management, but also students who are thinking about starting their careers. Many thanks to Loriana Tisher for joining us today. And up next, we'll have two girls and a book signing, and we'll find out more about each of their stories. Stay with us.